Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie Thunderbolts 2025 in English, then make sure to like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, do not forget to subscribe so you never miss our detailed breakdowns of the latest Hollywood blockbusters. In today's video, we are going to dive deep into Thunderbolts 2025, one of the most anticipated superhero films from Marvel Studios. This is not just another movie review. We will explore everything from what the movie is about, how it was made, where you can watch it, and all the interesting details that make it special. By the end of this video, you will know all the key points about Thunderbolts 2025. Let us begin with the basics. Thunderbolts is an upcoming Marvel film that brings together some of the most intriguing anti-heroes and reformed villains from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Instead of focusing on the usual lineup of Avengers, this movie introduces a team that operates in the gray area between good and bad. The story focuses on characters who have been part of different Marvel projects over the years but never got the spotlight in a big crossover film. Thunderbolts is expected to give them the stage to shine while presenting a fresh take on what it means to be a superhero in the modern world. Now let us talk about the technical departments. The film is directed by Jake Schreier, a filmmaker known for his unique visual storytelling. The script is written by Eric Pearson, who has already worked on Marvel projects such as Black Widow. In terms of music, Marvel has once again brought in a talented composer who is expected to give the film an energetic yet emotional score. The cinematography is designed to capture both the intensity of the action sequences and the more grounded character-driven moments. Pre-production started long before the cameras rolled, with months of planning, costume design, set construction, and stunt rehearsals. Filming took place in multiple international locations, combining studio sets with real-world environments to create a grounded but cinematic look. After the filming wrapped, post-production took over, which included editing, sound mixing, and the heavy use of visual effects to bring the large-scale action scenes to life. When it comes to the budget, Thunderbolts 2025 follows the tradition of big Marvel releases with a production budget estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Marvel films are known for their large-scale investment, and this movie is no exception. The expectation is that Thunderbolts will not only perform strongly at the box office but also expand the universe in ways that set up future storylines. Box office analysts are already predicting that this film could cross major milestones, given the popularity of Marvel properties and the curiosity around this unusual team-up. Now let us take a look at the cast. The film brings back Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, David Harbour as Red Guardian, Hannah John Kamen as Ghost, Olga Kurylenko as Taskmaster, Wyatt Russell as U.S. Agent, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. Each actor is playing a character who has appeared before in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in Thunderbolts they come together as one team. Their chemistry and contrasting personalities are expected to be one of the main attractions of the movie. Some cast members have already shared that the film gives them more depth and emotional material to work with than in their previous appearances. As for the story, without going into heavy spoilers, the film centers around Valentina assembling this group of misfit heroes for a dangerous mission that normal superheroes might avoid. The team struggles with trust issues, personal conflicts, and moral dilemmas while facing a threat that could shake global security. Unlike Avengers movies where the heroes usually share the same moral compass, Thunderbolts presents a group that constantly questions each other and their leader. This makes the story both unpredictable and emotionally engaging. From a performance standpoint, fans are particularly excited about Florence Pugh leading the film. After her strong performance in Black Widow and Hawkeye, she has quickly become a fan favorite. Sebastian Stan also continues his long journey as Bucky, bringing depth to a character who has been through many phases of redemption. David Harbour provides both humor and emotional strength as Red Guardian, while Wyatt Russell's U.S. Agent adds tension with his unpredictable nature. Together, these performances are expected to give Thunderbolts a very different tone compared to previous Marvel team-ups. Beyond the cast and crew, one of the most interesting aspects of Thunderbolts is how it connects with a larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film is positioned as a bridge between previous storylines and future projects. Many fans believe that it will set up events that could tie into Avengers: The Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. Marvel has always used these crossover films to expand their universe, and Thunderbolts is no exception. To sum it all up, Thunderbolts 2025 is shaping up to be an exciting Marvel film that takes a bold step away from traditional heroes. With a talented cast, strong creative team, and a unique focus on complex characters, it promises to deliver something new for fans. In this video we covered what the movie is about, its technical details, budget, cast, story overview, and connections to the Marvel Universe. If you are a fan of Marvel, or just enjoy action-packed films with emotional depth, Thunderbolts 2025 is definitely worth keeping an eye on. Make sure to watch this video till the end and subscribe to our channel so you never miss updates on movies like this. Thunderbolts is a 2025 Marvel Studios film directed by Jake Schreier with a screenplay by Eric Pearson and Joanna Collo. The film brings together an ensemble cast led by Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, David Harbour as Alexei Shostakov, also known as Red Guardian, Wyatt Russell as John Walker U.S. Agent, Olga Kurylenko as Antonia Dreykov Taskmaster, Hannah John Kamen as Ava Star Ghost, Louis Pullman as Robert Reynolds Bob Sentry, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine. The movie runs for a little over 2 hours and was released in May 2025 as part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 5 slate. The story begins with a political scandal surrounding Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who is under investigation for secret programs tied to a private organization called the OXE Group. To control the fallout and protect herself, she assembles a group of operatives and antiheroes and sends them on a mission to one of the OXE facilities overseas. The team is told that the mission is crucial, but in reality it is designed to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence that could implicate Valentina. When the mission unravels, the group realizes they have been deceived and must now fight not only for survival but also against betrayal from within. During the mission, the group encounters a man in suspended animation named Bob Reynolds. Once awakened, he is introduced as Sentry, a superpowered individual with abilities that appear to make him a valuable asset. However, it becomes clear that Bob is emotionally fragile and suffering from memory loss and unresolved trauma. His unstable condition hides a dangerous side that ultimately transforms into the Void, a destructive manifestation of his deepest fears. Each team member brings their own history and conflicts into the mission. Yelena Belova struggles with her past as a trained assassin. Bucky Barnes continues his journey as a soldier burdened by his history as the Winter Soldier. Red Guardian adds both humor and emotional weight, while John Walker remains volatile and unpredictable. Taskmaster deals with scars from years of manipulation, and Ghost continues to suffer from instability linked to her powers. Together, they form a reluctant team forced to cooperate under difficult circumstances. As Sentry's condition worsens, the Void emerges as the central threat. The Void has the ability to trap individuals in psychological states known as shame rooms, where they are confronted with their deepest regrets and insecurities. This forces each member of the team to face unresolved trauma while also trying to save Bob from losing himself completely. The climax centers on their attempt to reach Bob's true self within the Void, balancing physical conflict with emotional confrontation. Yelena Belova takes a central role in leading the effort to bring Bob back, highlighting her growth and redemption. The team, despite their differences, chooses to stand together against both the Void and Valentina's manipulations. Valentina attempts to present Bob as a hero to the public to shield herself from political consequences, but the truth of her deception becomes clear as events unfold. The resolution of the film comes not through overwhelming force but through empathy and shared struggle. By connecting with Bob's humanity, the team is able to suppress the Void and restore a fragile balance. This ending emphasizes the themes of identity, trauma, and redemption. By the conclusion, the Thunderbolts emerge as a new kind of team in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They are not traditional heroes but individuals who find strength in shared experience and survival. Their public image shifts, and the film sets up possibilities for future involvement in larger storylines. Thunderbolts distinguishes itself from other Marvel films by focusing heavily on character-driven drama alongside action. The emphasis on psychological conflict and trauma gives the movie a darker and more introspective tone while still delivering the large-scale sequences expected from Marvel productions. Florence Pugh's performance is noted as a highlight, and the ensemble cast provides depth through their contrasting personalities and histories. In summary, Thunderbolts 2025 presents a story about a team of conflicted anti-heroes manipulated into a mission that turns into a battle for survival, trust, and self-discovery. It introduces Bob Reynolds as Sentry, explores the dangers of his alter ego the Void, and develops the arcs of existing Marvel characters. The film functions as both a standalone ensemble story and a key part of the evolving Marvel universe, bridging past narratives with future possibilities. Thunderbolts 2025 begins with an opening image that sets the tone of political intrigue and moral uncertainty. We see Valentina Allegra de Fontaine caught in the middle of a brewing scandal, her reputation under fire and her role in covert operations threatened by exposure. From the very start, the film signals that this is not going to be a straightforward superhero tale, but one rooted in secrecy, manipulation, and blurred lines of morality. The world feels tense and unstable, establishing the groundwork for why a team like the Thunderbolts would even come together. The setup introduces each character in fragmented sequences. Yelena Belova is shown on a small mission of her own, still wrestling with the shadow of Natasha's legacy while trying to carve her own identity. Bucky Barnes is living quietly, attempting to stay under the radar but carrying the constant weight of his past as the Winter Soldier. Red Guardian is presented in a mix of comedy and tragedy, eager for relevance but stuck in the shell of a fading hero. John Walker continues to wrestle with his public image after being disgraced as Captain America, still trying to prove he belongs. Ghost is isolated, struggling with the instability of her phasing abilities. Taskmaster remains haunted by the control she once lived under, now trying to rebuild a sense of agency. This fractured introduction establishes a group of people who are not naturally a team but individuals carrying heavy baggage. The inciting incident occurs when Valentina recruits them under the guise of a necessary covert mission. She frames it as a chance for redemption, but the audience quickly senses ulterior motives. Their target is an overseas OXE group facility, supposedly harboring dangerous technology. The team is reluctant yet curious, and Valentina's persuasion is mixed with manipulation. The promise of purpose and a second chance draws them in, setting the story into motion. The rising action builds as the Thunderbolts embark on their mission. The narrative uses suspenseful pacing here, intercutting their journey with hints that something is wrong with Valentina's plan. Early clashes between team members highlight their contrasting personalities, with Yelena attempting to lead pragmatically, Walker pushing for control through aggression, and Red Guardian injecting humor that masks his insecurities. Ghost and Taskmaster keep their distance, creating tension that is more psychological than physical. When the group reaches the facility, the film delivers its first big turn. Instead of weapons or technology, they find a suspended subject, Bob Reynolds. His awakening shifts the narrative focus completely. The middle of the film unravels Bob's story. He appears vulnerable, suffering from memory gaps and confusion, but also displays incredible power. The Thunderbolts begin to question why he was hidden away and why Valentina wants him back under her influence. The turning point comes when Bob begins to lose control and the destructive alter ego known as the Void surfaces. This mid-film revelation reshapes the mission from extraction to containment and survival. The narrative choice to delay Bob's true nature keeps viewers aligned with the team's confusion, ensuring we learn about him at the same pace as the characters. As the Void grows stronger, the team is pulled into surreal sequences where their deepest regrets and traumas are manifested. The narrative becomes less linear here, with hallucinations and memory sequences blurring the timeline. Bucky relives his Winter Soldier days, Walker sees visions of his failed heroism, Yelena faces Natasha's death again, and Ghost is confronted with her unstable existence. These moments are not just exposition but emotional peaks that reveal why each character struggles to trust themselves or others. The choice to use non-linear storytelling here deepens our empathy for the team and makes their eventual cooperation more meaningful. The climax begins when Valentina attempts to control the situation publicly by presenting Bob as a hero, using him to shield her from political fallout. However, the Thunderbolts, now aware of her betrayal, choose to resist. The big final turn is when they decide to enter the Void's influence together, not as individuals but as a team. Their shared decision marks the narrative pivot from mistrust to fragile unity. Yelena becomes the emotional core, refusing to give up on Bob and insisting that his humanity can still be saved. The finale unfolds in both a physical and psychological battle. On one level, they fight manifestations of the Void's power. On another, they reach out to Bob's fragmented consciousness. Yelena's determination and the team's combined support pull Bob back, weakening the Void enough to be contained. The emotional high point lands when Bob himself chooses to resist the Void, spurred by the team's empathy. It is a resolution that prioritizes emotional connection over brute force. The closing beats restore the linear flow, showing the Thunderbolts surviving the ordeal and returning as something more than pawns of Valentina. They emerge battered but bonded, publicly perceived as a new kind of team. Valentina, while not fully defeated, is left exposed, setting up threads for the future. The film ends on a reflective note, with the team uncertain about their place in the world but aware they now share something that binds them together. Narratively, Thunderbolts balances traditional Marvel action with deeper character studies. The deliberate pacing of reveals, the non-linear exploration of trauma, and the emotional peaks all serve to make the story feel less like a typical team-up and more like an introspective journey. By holding back information about Bob until the right moment and then immersing the audience in subjective experiences through hallucinations, the film tightens emotional engagement while leaving room for interpretation. It is both entertaining and layered, with standout scenes that linger beyond their role in advancing the plot. Thunderbolts 2025 is not simply about action sequences or a large-scale mission. At its core, it is a story about broken individuals forced to operate as a team, and the film gives space to show how each of them evolves over the course of the narrative. Every major character begins in a place of conflict or uncertainty, and by the end, their choices and relationships reflect growth, compromise, or in some cases, a lack of change. The film's character work is one of the key reasons it feels different from other Marvel entries. Yelena Belova functions as the emotional center of the story. When the movie opens, she is restless, trying to live up to the shadow of Natasha Romanoff while at the same time resisting the idea of becoming a leader. What she wants is a purpose that feels genuine rather than manipulated, but standing in her way is her skepticism and her anger at how figures like Valentina always seem to exploit people like her. A subtle beat early on shows her refusal to sit near Valentina during the briefing, silently signaling her mistrust. Over the course of the film, Yelena grows into the de facto leader of the Thunderbolts. By the time she pleads with Bob Reynolds to resist the Void, it is clear she has embraced responsibility not because she was forced to, but because she chose to step up. Her arc is one of reluctant leadership that becomes authentic by the final act. Bucky Barnes enters the story carrying the same burden that has defined him for years, the Winter Soldier's past. His want is simple but painful. He longs for peace, anonymity, and the chance to stop being used as a weapon. What stands in his way is both his reputation and his own guilt. Throughout the movie, we see small gestures that reflect his conflict. For example, when Walker tries to take command of the mission, Bucky quietly steps aside rather than push back, signaling how little he wants the role of a soldier anymore. Inside the hallucinations created by the Void, Bucky is forced to relive his assassinations, and his collapse into tears marks one of the emotional peaks of the film. By the end, Bucky does not transform completely, but he begins to accept that he can be more than his past if he chooses to fight alongside people who see him as more than a weapon. His growth is subtle, less about redemption and more about survival with dignity. John Walker, the U.S. agent, is portrayed as volatile from the very beginning. He wants respect and validation, to reclaim the image he lost when the world rejected him as Captain America. What stands in his way is his own ego and his refusal to admit weakness. A telling line comes when he insists the Thunderbolts need order, not trust, exposing his belief that fear is more effective than loyalty. Over time, however, his encounters with Bucky and Yelena soften his edge. He never fully transforms, but his willingness to sacrifice himself during the final battle to buy Yelena more time shows that his pride is at least tempered by a sense of duty. Walker's arc is one of partial growth, enough to make him an asset but not enough to erase his flaws. Red Guardian is used for both comic relief and heartfelt reflection. He begins as a washed-up soldier desperate to be relevant again. His want is glory, but what blocks him is age and the perception that he is more of a relic than a warrior. His moments of growth are often subtle, like a quiet scene where he admits to Yelena that he wishes he had been a better father figure. By the finale, Red Guardian may not recapture his glory, but he redefines his role, realizing his value lies not in medals but in loyalty to the people standing beside him. Ghost is one of the most tragic figures. She wants stability and relief from the constant pain of her phasing ability. What stands in her way is the very condition that defines her. Early in the story, she avoids interaction, standing apart from the team in nearly every scene. Her hallucinations in the Void force her to confront the isolation she has built around herself. By the end, Ghost has not been cured, but she chooses to stay with the team rather than withdraw. Her arc is about learning to trust that others can carry part of her burden. Taskmaster has one of the quieter arcs. At the beginning, she remains reserved, defined by her skill but emotionally distant due to her years under Dreykov's control. A small but telling beat comes when she mimics Yelena's fighting style not for necessity, but almost as a gesture of acknowledgement. By the conclusion, Taskmaster has not spoken much, but her choice to stay with the Thunderbolts suggests a step toward reclaiming her agency. The antagonist, or more accurately the internal conflict, is embodied by Bob Reynolds and his alter ego, the Void. Bob wants to be human again, to live without fear or violence, but standing in his way is the Void, a manifestation of his trauma and despair. His arc is the most dramatic. We watch him go from a fragile survivor to a nearly world-ending threat, and finally to a man who regains a fragile grip on himself thanks to Yelena's empathy. The antagonist here is not only a force of destruction but also a mirror to the team's own internal battles. Valentina represents manipulation and control. She does not change but remains a consistent reminder of how systems exploit broken people. Her presence frames the contrast. Where Valentina uses trauma as leverage, the Thunderbolts learn to use trauma as connection. By the end of Thunderbolts, each character has shifted in small but significant ways. Yelena finds her voice as a leader, Bucky leans toward acceptance, Walker tempers his pride, Red Guardian discovers meaning in loyalty, Ghost chooses connection, and Taskmaster hints at healing. Bob's resolution is bittersweet, as he is saved but remains fragile. The arcs are not neat or overly triumphant, but they are grounded in human struggles. This makes Thunderbolts stand apart as a Marvel film where character growth matters as much as the explosions. The performances in Thunderbolts 2025 are one of the film's strongest elements, with the cast blending well to bring out the complex personalities of antiheroes and morally gray figures. Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova continues her streak of charismatic and sharp portrayals. She balances sarcasm with underlying vulnerability, making her more than just comic relief. Her chemistry with David Harbour's Red Guardian shines in both humorous and emotional exchanges, giving the film an anchor of humanity even when the narrative dives into darker themes. Harbour himself leans into the aging hero role with more nuance this time, showing a character both eager for validation and weighed down by his own irrelevance. His timing, particularly in moments of physical comedy, is precise, but he also delivers surprising emotional depth when Red Guardian faces failure and regret. Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes stands out as the emotional heart of the group. His portrayal captures the weariness of a man who has carried trauma for decades but is still trying to find a reason to fight. Stan's subtle gestures, his silence during chaotic arguments, the haunted looks when past violence is mentioned, show a character who may never fully escape his history. His arc is given quiet strength through performance rather than dialogue-heavy scenes, and that choice makes him one of the most memorable parts of the movie. Wyatt Russell as John Walker delivers a performance layered with intensity and suppressed insecurity. He embodies a man desperate to prove himself after past failures, and Russell uses his physicality and clipped delivery to underline Walker's constant tension between loyalty and personal ego. His scenes with Pugh are especially sharp, showcasing the friction between Walker's rigid worldview and Yelena's sarcastic independence. Hannah John Kamen as Ghost delivers one of the more understated performances in the film. Her quiet and restrained energy creates a different rhythm compared to the louder personalities of her teammates. She uses pauses, body language, and minimal dialogue to communicate Ghost's internal struggle, and it makes her presence memorable without needing heavy screen time. She becomes a scene stealer in her emotional moments, especially when she is confronted with the idea of trust after a lifetime of survival-driven isolation. Olga Kurylenko as Taskmaster gets more to work with than in her previous appearance, and her performance helps redefine the character. Rather than a blank slate, Kurylenko adds emotional subtlety, allowing small gestures and brief expressions to show growth from a controlled weapon into a person with agency. Though she does not dominate scenes, her presence carries weight, and her fights showcase strong physical commitment to the role. Julia Louis-Dreyfus as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is one of the film's most entertaining performers. She commands every scene she enters with her sharp delivery and dry wit. Her ability to walk the line between manipulative mastermind and slyly comedic figure adds unpredictability, keeping the audience unsure of her true intentions. Louis-Dreyfus does not need long monologues to dominate. Her presence and timing make her one of the film's most effective players. Even in supporting roles, there are memorable contributions. Each actor seems aware that their character's moral ambiguity is the point, and rather than playing for likability, they lean into the flaws. This makes their interactions electric, since no performance feels like it is chasing the heroic spotlight. The strongest moments come when chemistry drives the scene. Pugh and Harbour bring out both humor and tenderness, Stan and Russell push tension and moral contrast, and John Kamen's quiet stillness plays beautifully against louder teammates. Even when the dialogue is functional, the actors elevate it by grounding it in emotion or conflict. There are minor inconsistencies in tone, with some characters leaning heavily into humor while others carry weightier seriousness, but these differences highlight the team's fractured dynamic rather than detract from it. Overall, the performances succeed in making Thunderbolts not just a spectacle but a character-driven ensemble. The cast commits fully, and their work ensures the film resonates emotionally beyond its action beats. The direction of Thunderbolts 2025 plays a crucial role in shaping the film's identity as both a Marvel ensemble story and a darker exploration of flawed heroes. Jake Schreier, stepping into the Marvel universe, approaches the material with a grounded tone that distinguishes it from the more flamboyant spectacles of the MCU. His vision leans into moral ambiguity and the psychology of antiheroes rather than traditional heroics, which creates a film that feels distinct in atmosphere. From the opening sequences, Schreier sets a mood that is grittier and more restrained, establishing a world where humor exists but is balanced with tension and unease. One of the strongest aspects of Schreier's direction is his handling of pacing. The film avoids the relentless speed of many Marvel entries, instead allowing moments of silence and reflection to sit with the audience. He does not rush character beats, giving actors the space to deliver subtle expressions and emotional nuance. This choice helps elevate the character arcs and gives the audience a chance to connect with individuals who might otherwise come across as one-dimensional. At the same time, he maintains momentum in the action sequences, ensuring that the slower emotional beats do not derail the film's energy. Stylistically, Schreier uses a combination of atmospheric close-ups and grounded action framing. He avoids hyper-stylized slow motion and instead opts for fight choreography that feels weighty and raw, particularly in hand-to-hand combat scenes. The use of close-ups during emotional exchanges makes the tension between characters more intimate, pulling the viewer into their conflicts. His decision to use a muted color palette reinforces the themes of moral uncertainty and contrasts sharply with the bright, polished visuals seen in other Marvel projects. Schreier also demonstrates skill in ensemble staging. With a large cast of strong personalities, the film could easily have felt chaotic or unbalanced, but he manages to give each character moments to shine without overshadowing others. Group dynamics are handled through framing and blocking that subtly communicates hierarchy and tension. For example, Yelena's sarcasm is often given focus in the foreground, while Bucky's quieter presence lingers in the background, visually underlining his emotional detachment until key moments when Schreier brings him forward. These choices enhance the narrative without requiring heavy exposition. The direction also highlights the theme of manipulation through Valentina's presence. Schreier stages her scenes with deliberate power imbalance, often placing her in positions of control in the frame, reinforcing her influence over the team. This visual storytelling complements the script and ensures the audience feels the weight of her manipulation without needing it spelled out. In terms of pacing decisions, Schreier avoids the typical Marvel formula of endless quips during high-stakes moments. While humor is present, it is strategically placed, keeping the darker tone intact. This tonal consistency makes the film stand out, though some viewers accustomed to Marvel's lighter style may find it heavier than expected. Still, the direction shows confidence in its vision rather than trying to mimic past successes. There are, however, moments where the direction stumbles. Some transitions between major set pieces feel abrupt, as if more connective tissue was needed between character-driven drama and large-scale action. A few sequences lean on shaky camera work that can distract from the otherwise grounded visual style. While these choices may have been intended to heighten chaos, they occasionally interrupt the flow rather than enhance immersion. Overall, Schreier's direction gives Thunderbolts a clear identity. His restraint, attention to character, and grounded style make the film feel closer to a psychological action drama than a typical superhero outing. By guiding the actors toward performances that emphasize vulnerability and conflict, and by using visual choices that reinforce the team's fractured nature, Schreier ensures the movie resonates beyond spectacle. His vision may not appeal to every Marvel fan, but it solidifies Thunderbolts as one of the MCU's more daring and distinct ensemble entries. The cinematography of Thunderbolts 2025 plays a defining role in how the film is experienced, shaping mood, tone, and emotional resonance through deliberate choices in framing, movement, color, and lighting. Rather than relying on the glossy spectacle often associated with Marvel films, the visuals here lean into a grittier, more grounded aesthetic that reflects the morally gray characters at its center. The camera does not simply record events but actively interprets them, creating a sense of intimacy in character-driven moments and scale in the action sequences. This visual identity helps differentiate Thunderbolts from earlier ensemble entries in the MCU. One of the most striking aspects of the cinematography is its use of framing to establish relationships and power dynamics. Wide shots are frequently used in group scenes to highlight the fractured unity of the team, with characters often positioned apart from one another, visually reinforcing their lack of trust. Conversely, tight close-ups dominate the film's more vulnerable moments, such as Bucky Barnes reflecting on his past or Yelena Belova confronting moral dilemmas. These close shots allow the audience to connect with subtle expressions, making their internal struggles more palpable. By alternating between wide and intimate framing, the cinematography underscores the push and pull between group dysfunction and individual growth. Movement also plays a key role in how the story unfolds visually. Action scenes are shot with a fluid but controlled camera that avoids the overly chaotic handheld style seen in some blockbusters. Instead, there is a sense of weight and geography to each sequence, allowing viewers to follow the choreography clearly. Tracking shots, particularly during infiltration missions, immerse the audience in the team's perspective, building tension as the camera moves with them through confined spaces. These movements make the film feel more immersive and grounded, reinforcing the sense that the characters are vulnerable and improvising rather than invincible superheroes. Color palette choices further cement the film's identity. The cinematography relies on muted, desaturated tones dominated by grays, dark greens, and earthy hues. This subdued palette reflects the world of espionage and covert operations that the Thunderbolts inhabit. It also contrasts with the brighter and more colorful palettes of other Marvel films, signaling that this is a story about damaged individuals rather than idealized heroes. Occasional bursts of saturated color are used sparingly for emphasis, such as the glow of an explosion against a night sky or the stark red of Valentina's presence in key scenes, symbolizing her manipulative power. These visual contrasts make those moments feel more impactful because of their rarity. Lighting choices add another layer of meaning. Low-key lighting dominates much of the film, bathing characters in shadow and visually mirroring their uncertain morality. Scenes of interrogation or betrayal are often lit from the side, casting half a face in darkness and suggesting divided loyalties or hidden motives. By contrast, moments of fleeting unity between the team are shown with more balanced lighting, creating a visual language that reflects emotional states. Night sequences are particularly atmospheric, with pools of artificial light illuminating only portions of the frame, heightening tension and forcing the audience to anticipate danger lurking in the unseen. Several standout shots exemplify the cinematography's effectiveness. One memorable sequence features Yelena framed against a snow-covered battlefield, her solitary figure contrasted against the vast emptiness, visually communicating both her isolation and her resilience. Another highlight occurs during a mission gone wrong, when the camera lingers in a long tracking shot as the team scrambles under heavy fire, forcing the audience to feel their disorientation and desperation. These images are not just decorative, they carry narrative weight by deepening our understanding of the characters and the stakes. The cinematography also uses visual symbolism to reinforce themes. Reflections in glass surfaces are a recurring motif, often capturing characters like Bucky or Taskmaster in moments of doubt, suggesting fractured identities and unresolved pasts. Symmetrical compositions are used sparingly but effectively, often during Valentina's scenes, visually underlining her control and dominance over the chaotic team. In this way, the cinematography does more than decorate the screen. It becomes an active storyteller, embedding meaning into visual details that reward attentive viewers. What stands out most is how the cinematography strikes a balance between realism and spectacle. While it avoids the overly polished sheen of other MCU projects, it still delivers grandeur in its action set pieces. Explosions, large-scale battles, and wide aerial shots provide scope, but they are always grounded by the grittier aesthetic. This ensures the film feels consistent in tone, never drifting too far into fantasy despite its Marvel roots. In the end, the cinematography of Thunderbolts 2025 is essential to the film's identity. Through its deliberate use of framing, movement, muted colors, and evocative lighting, it shapes not only how the story is seen but also how it is felt. The images linger after the credits because they are tied to emotion and theme, not just spectacle. By committing to a more grounded atmospheric style, the cinematography sets Thunderbolts apart as one of the more visually distinctive entries in the Marvel Universe. The editing and pacing of Thunderbolts 2025 play a central role in defining the film's tone, balancing moments of high-octane action with the quieter psychological beats that shape the story. Unlike many Marvel films that lean heavily on relentless momentum, Thunderbolts takes a more measured approach, using its editing rhythm to give space to character interactions while still delivering spectacle when needed. The result is a film that feels both grounded and urgent, though not without moments where the pacing falters. Transitions between scenes are handled with restraint, often avoiding flashy visual tricks in favor of straightforward cuts that maintain tonal consistency. The film's narrative is built on a mix of ensemble drama and action, and the editing reflects this by alternating between expansive group sequences and intimate close-ups. This shift in scale is smoothly managed through careful cutting, ensuring the audience is never jarred by sudden tonal changes. For example, a heated group debate might be followed by a quieter moment of reflection with a single character, and the cut allows the tension to simmer rather than dissipate. Montages are sparingly used, but when they appear, they serve to propel momentum during training or mission preparation sequences. Rather than traditional upbeat montages, however, the film opts for grittier, slower builds that reflect the fractured nature of the team. These sequences often intercut between characters preparing in isolation, underlining their lack of unity while still creating a sense of forward drive. The editing ensures that even these faster-paced sections do not feel like shortcuts, but instead deepen our understanding of the team dynamic. One of the film's most interesting editorial choices lies in its use of cross-cutting to build suspense. During missions, the editing frequently cuts between multiple team members working in different parts of the environment, creating tension as viewers anticipate how their separate actions will converge. This technique not only raises stakes but also reinforces the theme of forced collaboration among reluctant allies. In a particularly effective sequence, the film cuts between Yelena infiltrating a facility and Bucky confronting guards outside, with timing that escalates the tension until both threads collide in a burst of violence. Flashbacks are integrated selectively, offering glimpses into the characters' haunted pasts. The editing of these sequences is distinct, often using slightly slower pacing and muted sound to separate them from the present-day narrative. These flashbacks avoid overwhelming the story, instead appearing as short, sharp reminders of unresolved trauma. Their brevity keeps the main story moving forward, but their placement is deliberate, often arriving just before a character must make a morally difficult choice. This rhythm connects past and present in ways that heighten emotional stakes without derailing momentum. The pacing across the acts is carefully modulated. The first act takes its time establishing the team and their fragile dynamics, which some viewers might find slow compared to the explosive openings typical of Marvel films. However, this slower pace pays off later, as the groundwork allows the rising action of the second act to feel more layered. Once the team embarks on their first mission, the editing quickens, with shorter cuts and sharper rhythms that mirror the unpredictability of their situation. The climactic third act strikes a balance between spectacle and character-driven beats, alternating between large-scale battles and tighter, more emotional confrontations. Silence and restraint are notable tools in the film's editing language. Unlike many blockbusters that rely on near-constant sound and rapid cuts, Thunderbolts occasionally lingers on stillness, letting tension build without movement. These moments of quiet editing, often lasting a few seconds longer than expected, make the eventual bursts of action feel more impactful. For instance, a scene where the team debates their loyalty holds on uneasy expressions long enough for viewers to feel the discomfort before the dialogue resumes, amplifying the drama without needing additional effects. Still, the editing is not flawless. There are sections where the rhythm feels uneven, particularly in transitions between character-focused scenes and large-scale action. Some viewers may sense a drag in the midsection, where extended dialogue sequences slow momentum before the next major turn. Conversely, a few action sequences are cut so quickly that the geography of the scene becomes harder to follow, slightly undercutting the grounded style the film otherwise maintains. These moments are minor but noticeable in a film that otherwise shows careful editorial control. Overall, the editing and pacing of Thunderbolts 2025 succeed in reinforcing its darker, more character-driven tone. By trusting silence, employing deliberate cross-cutting, and balancing slower introspection with bursts of action, the film creates a rhythm that feels distinct within the Marvel Universe. The editing does not simply serve the story but actively shapes how tension and emotion are experienced. While not without occasional stumbles in rhythm, it largely delivers a gripping and measured experience that lingers after the credits roll. The soundtrack and score of Thunderbolts 2025 serve as one of the most important tools in shaping its mood, tension, and emotional resonance. From the opening sequence to the final moments, music operates less as background and more as an active storyteller, guiding the audience through shifts in tone and character dynamics. Composer Henry Jackman, who has a history of delivering memorable Marvel scores, leans into darker and more brooding themes here, giving the film its unique identity within the MCU. Unlike other Marvel entries where music can sometimes feel generic, Thunderbolts uses its score and soundtrack deliberately to underline character psychology and enhance narrative beats. Recurring motifs form the backbone of the score. Bucky Barnes has a theme that draws from his past Winter Soldier cues but is stripped down, slower, and layered with melancholy, reflecting his ongoing struggle with guilt and redemption. Yelena Belova's motif is sharper and more playful, carrying faint echoes of her Black Widow heritage while introducing a tone of independence. These character-driven themes return at key points in the story, creating a sense of continuity and emotional payoff. The recurring use of motifs not only makes the score memorable but also reinforces the idea that these characters are haunted by their pasts while trying to forge new paths. One of the most effective uses of music comes in the film's quieter, introspective moments. Instead of overwhelming dialogue with grand orchestration, the score often pulls back into minimalist soundscapes, using strings or piano to mirror vulnerability. In scenes where the team confronts their fractured loyalties, silence is sometimes allowed to linger before a subtle cue enters, underscoring tension without dictating emotion. This restraint adds gravity and makes the louder, more dramatic musical moments later in the film hit harder. The action sequences benefit from a score that emphasizes rhythm and propulsion without becoming overbearing. Percussive beats and distorted electronic textures create a raw energy that matches the grounded fighting style of the team. Unlike some Marvel films where action scoring blends into a wall of sound, here the editing of music is precise, with shifts in tempo aligned to camera movement and fight choreography. A standout example occurs during the team's infiltration mission, where rising strings and pulsating drums build tension until the sequence explodes into chaos, at which point the music drops to near silence, letting the sound design of weapons and movement dominate. This contrast heightens immersion and keeps the audience on edge. The film also makes careful use of licensed music, though sparingly compared to other Marvel entries. A few select tracks punctuate moments of irony or levity, such as a classic rock song playing over a botched mission that underscores the absurdity of these antiheroes trying to function as a team. These needle drops are not overused but chosen with intent, offering tonal variety and connecting the film to a more grounded cultural reality. When they appear, they feel earned rather than distracting, and they leave a lasting impression because of their scarcity. Silence is another weapon in the film's sonic arsenal. In a tense sequence where a betrayal is revealed, the absence of music amplifies the weight of the moment, allowing every breath and pause in dialogue to sink in. This choice demonstrates confidence in storytelling, showing that the filmmakers trust performance and atmosphere without always leaning on the score. When the music does finally return after extended silence, it feels like a release of tension, making the emotional impact far stronger. Of course, there are moments where the score risks overplaying its hand. A few dramatic cues in the third act lean into heavy orchestration that feels more traditional Marvel than the restrained tone established earlier. While these moments are not distracting enough to derail the film, they stand out because of how carefully balanced the rest of the score is. The contrast between subtle earlier scoring and grander climactic music may divide audiences, with some appreciating the epic sweep and others wishing for continued restraint. Still, when the soundtrack and score align perfectly with the story, the results are unforgettable. A climactic sequence involving Bucky and Yelena features their individual motifs intertwining into a single piece of music, symbolizing reluctant unity in the face of overwhelming odds. The layering of themes makes the scene soar emotionally, turning what could have been a standard action beat into something resonant. These musical decisions elevate Thunderbolts beyond a typical superhero outing, giving the film a soundscape that mirrors its themes of broken people trying to find meaning. Overall, the soundtrack and score of Thunderbolts 2025 are essential to the film's atmosphere. Through recurring motifs, strategic use of silence, carefully placed licensed tracks, and moments of musical restraint, the sound design elevates both action and drama. While a handful of cues lean too heavily into convention, most of the score demonstrates confidence and originality, ensuring the music lingers with audiences long after the credits roll. Thunderbolts 2025, beneath its action-driven narrative and ensemble cast of morally conflicted characters, is ultimately a story about broken people searching for meaning in a world that mistrusts them. At its core, the film wrestles with themes of identity, redemption, loyalty, and manipulation. These ideas give the story weight and separate it from more straightforward superhero adventures. While the film delivers plenty of spectacle, its lasting impact comes from how it forces both its characters and its audience to confront uncomfortable truths about morality and second chances. Identity is one of the most consistent themes explored throughout the film. Each member of the Thunderbolts carries a fractured sense of self, shaped by past mistakes, manipulations, or violent histories. Bucky Barnes is haunted by his years as the Winter Soldier, constantly questioning whether he deserves peace or punishment. Yelena Belova struggles to step out of Natasha Romanoff's shadow and define herself beyond her past as a trained assassin. Even Taskmaster is shown to wrestle with the trauma of being weaponized by others. Through subtle gestures, silences, and moments of vulnerability, the film illustrates how identity is not fixed but continually reshaped by choices. This makes the team's journey less about external victories and more about internal reconciliation. Redemption is the emotional heartbeat of the story. The characters are not traditional heroes but rather outcasts and former villains, given one more chance to prove their worth. Their missions often serve as metaphors for personal redemption. Infiltrating enemy bases mirrors their struggle to break into a world that has already judged them. The film avoids presenting redemption as simple or easy. Instead, it portrays it as an ongoing process, one that requires sacrifice, honesty, and the courage to face past sins. In moments where the team falters, the story reminds us that redemption is not guaranteed, it must be continually earned. The theme of manipulation runs strongly through Valentina Allegra de Fontaine's role. She embodies the dangers of power when wielded without accountability. Her ability to control the Thunderbolts by exploiting their weaknesses underscores a broader theme about authority and obedience. Are the team members truly acting on their own will, or are they simply pawns in a larger game? The cinematography and framing of her scenes visually underline her dominance, but the thematic resonance lies in how her influence forces each character to question whether they are reclaiming their agency or surrendering it once again. This dynamic reflects larger questions about governments, organizations, and the price of blind loyalty. Fear is another subtle but pervasive theme. For Bucky, it is the fear of becoming the Winter Soldier again. For Yelena, it is the fear of being forgotten or failing to honor Natasha's legacy. For Taskmaster, it is the fear of never breaking free from the cycle of control. These fears are not always spoken aloud but revealed through hesitation in action, moments of silence, or visual symbolism like characters standing in shadow or mirrored reflections. By showing rather than telling, the film deepens the emotional texture of its themes. Loyalty and trust emerge as central conflicts within the group dynamic. The Thunderbolts are not bound by ideals like the Avengers, but by necessity and coercion. The question of whether they can learn to trust one another becomes a test of both survival and humanity. Key moments, like a character risking themselves to protect a teammate, function as thematic echoes, showing that even in a team built on distrust, bonds can still form. However, the film never presents loyalty as absolute. Betrayals and moments of doubt highlight the fragile nature of trust when built on shaky foundations. Redemption and identity are further tied together by the film's closing beats. Rather than offering neat resolutions, the ending suggests that the characters' struggles will continue beyond the story. This ambiguity is one of the film's strengths, as it leaves viewers debating whether the Thunderbolts have truly changed or are still trapped in cycles of violence and manipulation. At times, the film sends mixed signals in its thematic execution. While much of the story leans into moral ambiguity, certain climactic scenes edge toward traditional heroics, with swelling music and grand visuals that feel at odds with the darker themes. Some viewers may find this inconsistency frustrating, while others may interpret it as a deliberate reflection of the characters' internal contradictions. The tension between cynical realism and hopeful redemption becomes part of the interpretive richness of the movie. Ultimately, Thunderbolts 2025 communicates its themes most powerfully through action and image rather than dialogue. A lingering shot of Bucky's hand trembling before regaining composure says more about his struggle for control than any speech could. A scene where Yelena watches children laugh in a park conveys her longing for innocence lost. Taskmaster's silent pauses between fights suggest an internal battle that words cannot express. These moments elevate the film beyond entertainment, grounding it in human emotion and universal questions of who we are and whether we can change. In the end, Thunderbolts 2025 is a meditation on second chances. Its themes of identity, redemption, loyalty, and manipulation resonate because they are delivered through flawed, human characters rather than idealized heroes. The film does not provide easy answers but instead asks viewers to sit with the ambiguity, making its themes both challenging and memorable. Visual effects and CGI have become integral to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Thunderbolts 2025 is no exception. As with most ensemble superhero films, the challenge lies in balancing spectacle with storytelling. When done well, visual effects do not simply dazzle but enhance the emotional and thematic weight of a moment. In Thunderbolts, the effects range from seamless, grounded enhancements to more exaggerated sequences that push the boundaries of believability. What stands out is how the film uses digital artistry to create a darker, grittier tone compared to more colorful Marvel entries, aligning with its focus on morally ambiguous characters. The film's opening mission sequence is one of the strongest showcases of how CGI can complement practical stunts. A raid on a fortified compound uses practical explosions and physical choreography, but these are layered with digital enhancements, debris scattering, enhanced firelight, and drone camera movements that would be impossible without digital support. The result is a visceral sequence that feels grounded yet cinematic, setting the stage for a movie that leans into realism while still delivering spectacle. One of the most notable uses of heavy visual effects is Taskmaster's combat sequences. The character's ability to mimic fighting styles is a natural fit for digital augmentation. Motion capture and compositing are used to replicate the distinct movements of various Marvel heroes, from Black Panther's agility to Captain America's shield maneuvers. The key is in how these effects are integrated. Rather than feeling like a digital stunt reel, the mimicry is choreographed to highlight Taskmaster's internal conflict and mechanical precision. In a particularly striking fight, the camera lingers on small visual details, Taskmaster's helmet visor reflecting their opponent's stance, or a slight digital enhancement of the body's movement that makes the mimicry uncanny. These effects enhance character storytelling rather than distract from it. Bucky Barnes' sequences also rely on CGI, particularly in moments where his enhanced arm is central to the action. The digital rendering of the metal arm is nearly flawless, blending with Sebastian Stan's physical performance to create the illusion of superhuman strength. Subtle effects, like the way the arm reflects light differently from skin or how it dents metal upon impact, ground the action in realism. In quieter moments, such as when Bucky flexes his hand in hesitation, the digital artistry supports the narrative, conveying his lingering unease about his violent past without drawing attention to the effect itself. Yelena Belova's sequences, by contrast, often minimize digital work, highlighting her reliance on grounded combat and practical choreography. However, VFX are used to elevate her agility, whether through wire removals in stunt work or enhancing her acrobatic leaps. In larger battle sequences, CGI helps exaggerate her speed and dexterity without breaking believability. These choices reinforce her identity as a character who is human but highly skilled, contrasting her grounded approach with more enhanced teammates. The film's larger set pieces naturally demand heavier visual effects. One mid-film sequence involving an aerial extraction blends practical helicopter footage with digital environments. The integration is mostly seamless. The movement of wind, the scattering of debris, and the dynamic angles help maintain immersion. The most impressive detail is how the CGI interacts with the environment. Dust clouds swirl realistically, and the lighting remains consistent even when transitioning from practical to digital shots. This kind of invisible artistry is often overlooked, but it is where Thunderbolts excels in comparison to earlier Marvel entries that sometimes lean too heavily on glossy, artificial backdrops. Not every effect lands perfectly. Certain wide shots of digital environments feel overly synthetic, particularly during city-based battles where the skyline and streets lack texture. In one instance, a collapsing building sequence pushes the rendering too far, and the artificiality briefly breaks immersion. These moments remind the audience of the computer-generated nature of the spectacle, pulling them out of the emotional stakes. While not as distracting as some of Marvel's more criticized CGI-heavy scenes, they highlight the fine line between enhancement and excess. One of the standout sequences involves Ghost's phasing ability. The character's power set demands complex compositing, as the effect must look both spectral and tactile. The film uses layered translucency, glitch-like distortions, and motion trails to communicate instability. What makes these visuals effective is their integration into the storytelling. Ghost's powers visually echo her fractured identity and inability to stay fully present. In quieter moments, her phasing glitches subtly, a reminder of her internal instability. In combat, the effects amplify tension, creating sequences where enemies strike through her form only to be hit from unexpected angles. The consistency and creativity of this effect make it one of the film's strongest visual achievements. The climax of Thunderbolts naturally involves the heaviest use of CGI. A large-scale confrontation features multiple team members using their abilities simultaneously, requiring complex compositing to keep the action coherent. Here, the visual effects team balances chaos with clarity, ensuring that each character's powers are distinct and visually legible. Explosions, phasing, enhanced strength, and digital environments blend into a sequence that, while clearly effects heavy, avoids the muddiness that has plagued some previous Marvel finales. The emphasis on character-driven action, focusing on individual moments of sacrifice or decision within the spectacle, helps ground the sequence in emotion. What distinguishes Thunderbolts from earlier Marvel films is its restraint. Rather than relying on constant CGI-heavy displays, the film strategically uses digital work to elevate practical action. The best sequences are those where the audience forgets about the effects entirely because they serve the story. Even when the spectacle is at its peak, the effects are often tied to character beats. Bucky's arm trembling as he resists violence, Ghost glitching as she questions her loyalty, Yelena's acrobatic leap to save a teammate. These moments prove that CGI can do more than create explosions. It can reveal vulnerability, fear, and choice. In conclusion, the visual effects and CGI in Thunderbolts 2025 succeed when they remain invisible or character-driven, and stumble only when the spectacle overtakes the texture of realism. While not flawless, the balance of practical and digital artistry supports the darker tone of the story and amplifies its central themes. By blending subtle enhancements with moments of large-scale spectacle, the film delivers visuals that feel both grounded and cinematic. Its strongest achievement lies not in showing off what technology can do, but in reminding viewers of what its characters are struggling to overcome. Set design and locations are often overlooked in superhero films where visual effects dominate the conversation, but in Thunderbolts 2025 the production design plays a vital role in grounding the story. Since this film deals with morally complex characters who operate in the shadows rather than shining brightly like the Avengers, the sets and locations reflect that tone. The production design leans into realism, creating environments that feel lived in, gritty, and layered with history, which in turn allows the actors to immerse themselves more deeply into their roles. These choices not only add authenticity but also contribute thematically, underscoring the ambiguity and fractured loyalties at the heart of the team. One of the most memorable environments is the safe house where the Thunderbolts regroup. It is not a sleek, high-tech base but a rundown industrial building converted for covert use. Exposed brick, flickering lights, mismatched furniture, and a sense of decay fill the space. These details signal that this is not a team of polished heroes but of broken individuals forced to work together. The set communicates character without dialogue. Each chipped wall and worn-out couch suggests the instability of the group itself. It is a smart departure from the shiny headquarters we are used to seeing in Marvel films, reinforcing the darker identity of this project. Bucky Barnes' personal spaces are also thoughtfully designed. His apartment feels small and utilitarian, a place of solitude rather than comfort. Sparse decoration, neutral colors, and minimal furniture highlight his isolation. Even the props, like a simple kettle or a stack of old books, convey his attempt at normalcy while suggesting the weight of his past. These touches allow viewers to connect to Bucky's inner conflict visually, without needing exposition. The production design creates an environment where Sebastian Stan can naturally inhabit the character, showing his loneliness and struggle for peace. In contrast, Yelena Belova's spaces are designed with more personality, even if they remain modest. A cluttered kitchen, faded photographs, and worn clothing hanging on walls add warmth to her otherwise pragmatic lifestyle. These details reflect her more grounded, sarcastic, and emotionally open personality compared to Bucky. Through these choices, the audience understands Yelena as someone still holding onto fragments of personal identity, even while being pulled into missions that strip individuality away. Government facilities and prisons play a crucial role in the film, and their design reflects cold, oppressive control. Long corridors lined with steel doors, fluorescent lighting that casts harsh shadows, and sterile interiors emphasize the lack of humanity in these spaces. The prison where Ghost is first introduced is designed with narrow cells, buzzing surveillance screens, and minimal comfort. These sets visually reinforce the themes of control, manipulation, and the price of freedom. The audience does not just hear that the Thunderbolts are tools of authority, they see it embedded in the world around them. The film's action sequences make strong use of diverse real-world locations, blending natural landscapes with urban decay. One mission set in a snow-covered Eastern European village combines practical location shooting with detailed set dressing. Crumbling houses, frozen streets, and scattered personal belongings lend authenticity to the backdrop. The use of a practical location rather than green screen allows the cast to interact with real textures. Snow crunching under boots, smoke rising from broken chimneys, which grounds the scene emotionally even as the spectacle escalates. Similarly, a sequence in an abandoned factory is enhanced by smart production design. Rusted machinery, broken pipes, and scattered tools add danger and atmosphere. When the Thunderbolts fight among the ruins, the environment becomes part of the choreography. Characters use the set for cover, slam enemies into machinery, and manipulate their surroundings creatively. This reinforces the grounded, improvisational style of the team compared to traditional superheroes who rely on polished weapons and powers. Urban locations also contribute heavily to the film's atmosphere. Instead of pristine skylines, we see shadowy alleys, cluttered safehouses, and neglected warehouses. The set dressing includes graffiti, discarded bottles, and dim neon lights that give the environments a layered realism. The cinematography often highlights these details, drawing attention to the sense of decay and forgotten spaces. This aligns with the narrative focus on characters who themselves are considered expendable or unwanted by society. The climax of the film features a large-scale battle in a government research facility, a set that blends both practical and digital elements. The base is filled with sterile white labs, high-security checkpoints, and underground chambers. While part of this environment is created with CGI, the core sets are practical, giving the actors real structures to interact with. Props such as control panels, heavy security doors, and experimental equipment add texture to the environment. These design choices make the facility feel tangible and heighten the stakes of the battle, since it is clear that the Thunderbolts are fighting in a real, oppressive place rather than an abstract digital backdrop. Small props throughout the film also add richness to the storytelling. Yelena's weapons have personal touches, like scuffed handles and improvised modifications. Ghost's equipment reflects her fractured identity, with her phasing suit designed to look pieced together and unstable. Even small items, like personal trinkets hidden in apartments or discarded food wrappers in hideouts, add believability to the world. These details are not flashy, but they give the impression of a lived-in universe, grounding the larger-than-life characters in reality. In conclusion, the set design and locations of Thunderbolts 2025 are essential to its success. By leaning into grit and authenticity, the production design reflects the darker, morally gray tone of the story. Real-world textures, practical sets, and thoughtful props give the characters environments that echo their internal struggles. The safehouses, prisons, factories, and landscapes all serve more than functional purposes. They become visual metaphors for the team's instability, entrapment, and search for redemption. While the film delivers the expected Marvel spectacle, its strongest visual achievement may be how its sets and locations immerse viewers in a believable world where flawed characters confront their pasts and their futures. The dialogue and script in Thunderbolts 2025 play a critical role in shaping its tone, characters, and themes. Unlike many Marvel projects that lean heavily on quips and comedic banter, this film takes a more restrained approach. The writing aims to balance sharp character exchanges with the weight of darker subject matter, ensuring that humor exists but never overwhelms the tension. At its strongest, the dialogue reveals character flaws, hidden motivations, and unspoken emotions through subtext rather than exposition. At its weakest, a few moments slip into predictability or over-explaining, but overall the script demonstrates a deliberate effort to create conversations that feel purposeful and textured. From the outset, the voice of the script establishes a tone of unease and distrust. Early conversations between the characters avoid the polished teamwork language of the Avengers and instead highlight differences, suspicions, and past grievances. When Yelena Belova mocks authority or pokes fun at her teammates, her lines work on two levels. They provide levity, but they also reveal her deep-seated skepticism toward leadership after her history with manipulation. Her sarcastic humor is not simply comic relief, it's a defense mechanism, and the script wisely uses her sharp wit to deepen her character rather than flatten her into a comedic role. Bucky Barnes, by contrast, is given dialogue that reflects his internal struggle. His lines are often short, direct, and almost hesitant, which matches his stoic personality. He does not waste words, and when he speaks, his words carry emotional weight. At one point, when confronted about his ability to lead, he responds with reluctance, not defiance. This moment captures his ongoing fear of responsibility and his doubt about redemption. His dialogue consistently communicates a man caught between wanting to step forward and fearing what his past actions mean for his future. Ghost's dialogue is among the most layered in the script. Her speech patterns are fragmented, often trailing off or cutting abruptly, which mirrors her unstable condition and fractured sense of self. In conversations with other team members, she reveals vulnerability not through direct admissions but through half-statements and guarded questions. This choice makes her one of the most complex characters to read, as the audience must pay attention to what she doesn't say as much as to what she does. Silence in her exchanges often feels louder than words, a sign of smart writing that relies on implication. Red Guardian, on the other hand, embodies a mix of bluster and pathos. His dialogue often begins with bravado or exaggerated self-praise, but it eventually exposes his insecurities. A boast about his past glories in battle quickly unravels into a confession of being forgotten or dismissed. This pattern in the script ensures that while he provides comic relief, his humor is grounded in sadness and longing for recognition. His lines are crafted not just to make the audience laugh, but to make them empathize with his need to matter. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine's dialogue is some of the sharpest in the film. She manipulates with precision, choosing words that simultaneously flatter, threaten, and destabilize her recruits. Her lines often contain double meanings, leaving characters unsure whether they are being praised or cornered. The script uses her dialogue as a tool of control, showing how language itself can be a weapon. This reinforces her role as a puppet master pulling strings behind the scenes. The script's handling of group interactions is also worth noting. Ensemble dialogue can easily become chaotic, but here it is managed with rhythm. Overlapping arguments feel natural without becoming confusing, and moments of silence punctuate heated exchanges to give them weight. In one scene, the team's bickering dissolves into silence after a cutting remark from Bucky, allowing the audience to feel the tension rather than hear it explained. These structural choices highlight how pacing within dialogue contributes to mood. However, the script is not without flaws. At times, certain lines feel too on the nose, particularly when characters articulate themes directly instead of letting them emerge organically. For example, a line about being tools of the system feels less impactful because the audience has already seen this theme expressed visually through oppressive environments and manipulative authority figures. In these moments, the script risks underestimating the audience's ability to interpret subtext. A few exchanges also lean into formulaic Marvel banter, with predictable joke structures that slightly undermine the otherwise unique tone of the film. Despite these occasional missteps, the dialogue succeeds in conveying emotional depth. Conversations between Bucky and Yelena, for example, highlight their contrasting coping mechanisms, his quiet regret versus her sarcastic defiance. In one particularly memorable exchange, their argument reveals not only their distrust of each other but also their shared trauma, building a fragile bond beneath the surface. Such dialogue-driven moments demonstrate how the script uses conflict to create intimacy, even among characters reluctant to trust. The script also demonstrates restraint in its use of silence. Several of the most powerful moments occur not through spoken words but through pauses, stares, or interrupted thoughts. This is particularly true in Ghost's arc, where silence conveys her pain more authentically than a monologue would. The willingness to let silence speak suggests confidence in both the writing and the actors. In conclusion, the dialogue and script of Thunderbolts 2025 are more layered and intentional than standard superhero fare. They prioritize subtext, emotional resonance, and character voice over relentless quips or exposition dumps. While a few lines stumble into obviousness or formula, the overall voice of the script is sharp, natural, and often poignant. Through careful dialogue, the film communicates its themes of manipulation, redemption, and mistrust, while giving each character a unique voice that reflects their internal struggles. It is this attention to detail in the writing that makes Thunderbolts stand apart as a more grounded and emotionally complex entry in the Marvel Universe. Thunderbolts 2025 sits in a unique position within the Marvel Cinematic Universe because of its genre execution. While most Marvel films are firmly rooted in the action-adventure and superhero genres, often infused with comedy and spectacle, Thunderbolts leans into a darker hybrid that blends action, drama, espionage thriller, and even subtle psychological tension. It attempts to carve its own identity, presenting itself less as a traditional superhero outing and more as a morally ambiguous ensemble piece. The way it executes these genres is central to both its strengths and its risks, as it challenges audience expectations while still trying to deliver the hallmarks of an MCU blockbuster. The film honors action genre expectations by delivering large-scale set pieces, explosive confrontations, and high-octane combat sequences. From tightly choreographed hand-to-hand battles to expansive team missions, the action is plentiful and often grounded in a gritty style that distinguishes it from the more fantastical fights of the Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy. The sequences in an abandoned factory, for instance, highlight a raw, improvisational style of combat, where characters use their environment as weapons and cover. This feels closer to a spy thriller than a superhero spectacle, and it shows how Thunderbolts leans into espionage action tropes. The big finale in a government facility, however, leans more into the superhero tradition of large-scale destruction and coordinated teamwork, ensuring that genre expectations of spectacle are still met. Where Thunderbolts refreshes the action genre is in its emphasis on vulnerability and stakes. Unlike the invincible sheen often given to superheroes, these characters feel breakable. Their flaws, both physical and psychological, bleed into their fighting styles. Bucky's precise but weary movements, Yelena's improvisational aggression, and Ghost's unstable powers all embody their inner struggles. This decision ensures the action is not just thrilling but also deeply tied to character development, elevating it beyond empty spectacle. The drama genre is also strongly present, and this is where the film diverges most from standard MCU fare. Much of the runtime is devoted to interpersonal conflict, moral questioning, and the exploration of trauma. The safe house scenes, where the team argues, mocks, and reluctantly bonds, are written like a character drama rather than an action film. These quieter moments honor dramatic conventions by focusing on dialogue, silence, and subtext, rather than explosions. They also refresh the Marvel formula by offering audiences a chance to see antiheroes grapple with their humanity, which may resonate more deeply with viewers who prefer character-driven storytelling. The espionage thriller aspect is another defining layer of genre execution. Thunderbolts often mirrors the tone of films like Captain America, The Winter Soldier, leaning into themes of mistrust, manipulation, and government control. The presence of Valentina Allegra de Fontaine as a manipulative authority figure reinforces the spy thriller tone, while missions set in shadowy locations, cold government facilities, and war-torn landscapes evoke the paranoia and tension of Cold War-style espionage narratives. These choices show the film honoring spy thriller traditions, but it also takes risks by tying them directly into the Marvel Universe's grander narrative. Where the film stumbles slightly in its genre execution is in balancing its darker tone with Marvel's usual expectations of humor and accessibility. While Yelena's sarcastic remarks and Red Guardian's exaggerated stories provide levity, these moments occasionally feel at odds with the otherwise grounded tone. The tension between comedy and drama is not always seamless, and some viewers may feel the humor undercuts the weight of the themes. This tension reflects Marvel's attempt to both honor its own brand identity and experiment with a new hybrid approach. Clichés are both avoided and leaned into. On one hand, Thunderbolts avoids the cliché of the perfect superhero team coming together effortlessly. Instead, it embraces the messiness of antiheroes clashing and distrusting one another. This subversion feels refreshing compared to the polished dynamics of the Avengers. On the other hand, the film still leans on familiar tropes, such as the third-act spectacle, the villain with a world-threatening agenda, and the predictable beats of betrayal and reconciliation. These tropes ensure the film remains recognizable as part of the MCU, but they also limit how far it can push into truly innovative territory. In terms of audience expectations, the film takes risks that may divide viewers. Fans looking for light-hearted Marvel humor and straightforward heroism may be unsettled by the darker, morally gray narrative and slower dramatic beats. Conversely, audiences craving a fresh take on superhero cinema may find Thunderbolts a welcome shift toward depth and realism. The film positions itself as Marvel's answer to ensemble anti-hero projects like DC's Suicide Squad, but it distinguishes itself by toning down the chaos and leaning into espionage-driven realism. Ultimately, the genre execution of Thunderbolts 2025 is both its defining strength and its greatest gamble. It honors action conventions with thrilling set pieces, pays respect to drama through emotional depth, and embraces espionage thriller tropes with a tone of paranoia and manipulation. It refreshes the superhero genre by presenting flawed characters and morally complex dynamics, while still leaning on familiar tropes to maintain Marvel's identity. Some choices may alienate fans expecting lightness and simplicity, but for others, this hybrid execution will feel bold and rewarding. Thunderbolts does not reinvent genre, but it reshapes it within the MCU, delivering a film that is less about heroes saving the day and more about broken people navigating a dangerous world. When analyzing Thunderbolts 2025, one important angle is its engagement with social and cultural commentary. Superhero films, especially within the Marvel framework, often function as more than just action-packed adventures. They mirror contemporary anxieties, moral questions, and cultural conversations. The Thunderbolts concept itself, revolving around morally ambiguous characters teaming up under government sanction, immediately raises questions about authority, accountability, and the blurred lines between heroism and villainy. The way the film handles these themes will determine whether it resonates as more than just spectacle or falls into shallow narrative repetition. One of the most obvious areas for cultural exploration lies in the film's depiction of government oversight. Previous Marvel stories, like Captain America: Civil War, already tapped into concerns about state control versus personal freedom, and Thunderbolts is positioned to revisit those debates through a darker lens. A government-sanctioned team made up of reformed or coerced antiheroes naturally invites commentary on how states use morally questionable individuals to achieve political goals. This mirrors real-world debates about the ethics of intelligence agencies, covert operations, or rehabilitative justice. If the film leans into this complexity, it could reflect on whether redemption is ever genuine when motivated by obligation rather than conviction. Another cultural aspect lies in the theme of second chances. The team includes characters with criminal pasts or controversial histories, and their recruitment implies that society, or at least its institutions, finds ways to reuse individuals who might otherwise be cast out. This connects to larger social conversations about forgiveness, rehabilitation, and whether flawed individuals deserve a path to reintegration. The risk is that the film could oversimplify this by glossing over past harms in order to present its characters as charming rogues. If done with nuance, however, it could serve as a metaphor for society's struggle to balance justice with compassion. Representation is another area where social commentary often emerges. Audiences are increasingly attentive to who gets screen time, whose stories are prioritized, and how identities are portrayed. If Thunderbolts embraces diversity not just in casting but also in character arcs, it could reflect ongoing shifts in cultural expectations. Representation, however, is not simply about including characters from different backgrounds, but about how meaningfully those perspectives are integrated into the narrative. The film could succeed in showing the team as a microcosm of a fractured society where individuals from different walks of life must learn to work together. On the other hand, if it falls back on stereotypes or tokenistic gestures, it risks alienating viewers. Cultural commentary can also appear in how violence and power are framed. A story about antiheroes has the chance to question traditional notions of heroism, showing that morality is not binary. The Thunderbolts might blur the lines between protecting people and serving political interests. This can parallel current debates about how governments frame military or security operations as acts of protection even when they may serve ulterior motives. If the film chooses to highlight these contradictions, it will feel timely and thought-provoking. If it glosses over them in favor of spectacle, it risks becoming tone-deaf to the climate in which it is released. One potential area of critique will be whether the film acknowledges or avoids deeper political implications. Thunderbolts as a concept has an inherently political backbone. Who gets to decide what constitutes justice and who has the authority to wield power? Depending on how explicitly the film engages with these questions, it could either stimulate conversation about real-world governance and accountability or retreat into safe storytelling that avoids controversy. Marvel films often tread carefully in this regard, offering allegories without overtly confronting divisive issues. The balance will matter in determining how impactful the commentary feels. Another cultural thread could lie in the exploration of teamwork and mistrust. In a world increasingly fractured by polarization, the idea of a team made up of individuals who do not fully trust each other could reflect on the difficulty of building coalitions in a divided society. If the story acknowledges the messy negotiations and ethical compromises required to collaborate, it will echo real-world struggles of unity in the face of ideological divides. However, if it reduces this to generic banter and superficial bonding, it may squander an opportunity to explore deeper cultural relevance. Audiences will also notice how gender dynamics are handled. With several prominent female characters expected to appear, their portrayal will matter. If they are written with agency, complexity, and equal narrative weight, the film can contribute positively to ongoing conversations about representation in blockbuster cinema. If instead they are sidelined or defined only through their connections to male counterparts, the film may feel outdated in its approach. Finally, Thunderbolts 2025 will likely be judged on whether its social commentary enhances or distracts from the narrative. Subtext works best when it feels woven into the story rather than pasted on top as a message. Viewers will respond more positively if the themes of accountability, redemption, and power arise naturally from the characters' conflicts and choices. Conversely, heavy-handed or inconsistent messaging can make a film seem preachy or insincere. In the end, the effectiveness of Thunderbolts' social and cultural commentary will depend on its willingness to embrace the complexities of its premise. The film has the ingredients to reflect on timely issues like redemption, authority, and diversity in a way that sparks discussion long after the credits roll. Whether it achieves that will depend on the balance struck between storytelling ambition and the demands of a mainstream superhero spectacle. One of the most important aspects of any Marvel film, especially one with an ensemble cast like Thunderbolts 2025, is audience engagement. Beyond the action and spectacle, the film will need to create moments that stick with viewers emotionally and intellectually, prompting reactions that range from gasps of shock to laughter, reflection, and even debate long after the credits roll. These engagement points are what give the movie staying power in popular culture and fuel conversations online and offline. The first type of engagement most viewers expect from a superhero film is surprise. Thunderbolts has the advantage of assembling characters who are not the most traditional heroes. This means the film can play with unpredictability in ways other Marvel projects could not. Sudden betrayals, shifting alliances, and characters making morally gray choices are likely to generate audible gasps in the theater. A scene where a supposed teammate turns against the group, or where an unexpected character from the wider Marvel universe appears, would spark immediate audience chatter and speculation about the broader direction of the franchise. Another key area of engagement will be humor. Marvel films are known for injecting levity into their stories, and with characters like Yelena Belova, who already carries a sharp wit and dry humor, audiences can expect laughs that balance out the darker tones of the premise. These moments of comic relief serve not only to entertain but also to build relatability. Quick exchanges, sarcastic remarks, and awkward team dynamics are likely to become quotable lines and gifable moments on social media. If handled well, the humor will emerge naturally from character personalities rather than feeling forced, strengthening both rewatchability and audience affection for the team. Emotional engagement will come from the arcs of redemption and vulnerability. Because the Thunderbolts are built from flawed characters, many with dark pasts, audiences will be invested in whether they can find genuine growth or healing. A character grappling with guilt or revealing a moment of deep personal pain could draw tears or at least stir empathy. Scenes that explore whether someone who has committed serious wrongs can truly change are powerful because they resonate with universal human struggles of forgiveness and second chances. These quieter beats will likely stand out as the film's most heartfelt moments, rewarding attentive viewers who look beyond the action. There will also be scenes built specifically to ignite debate. Because the team operates under government oversight, viewers will question whether the characters are serving the greater good or being manipulated by authority. A mission that results in collateral damage or an ethically questionable choice could divide audiences. Some might defend the necessity of the action, while others might argue the team crossed a line. These gray areas encourage discussion and fan theories about the true motives behind the government's involvement, giving the film a longer shelf life in public conversation. For rewatchability, the film will likely include layered details in both character interactions and visual storytelling. Subtle gestures, background design, and foreshadowing hints could make a second or third viewing rewarding. Fans who enjoy analyzing Marvel films frame by frame will likely uncover hidden references, Easter eggs, or narrative clues pointing to future storylines. The ability to discover something new with each watch enhances the sense that Thunderbolts is part of a larger interconnected universe while also deepening appreciation for the craftsmanship. Signature action sequences will also play a huge role in audience engagement. Large-scale battles or intricately choreographed fight scenes are designed for repeat viewing. Audiences may want to rewatch certain sequences just to admire the precision of the stunt work or the scale of the visual spectacle. At the same time, moments of teamwork, where characters with contrasting skills are forced to coordinate, can produce crowd-pleasing payoffs that stick in memory and highlight the chemistry between cast members. Finally, the film's closing moments will be crucial in shaping long-term engagement. Whether it ends on a hopeful note of redemption, a shocking betrayal, or a cliffhanger that teases future conflicts, the final act will determine the strength of audience buzz. A memorable ending ensures that fans continue debating theories, speculating about sequels, and sharing their interpretations of what it all means. In the end, Thunderbolts 2025 has the potential to engage audiences on multiple levels, through shock, humor, emotional depth, ethical debate, and spectacle. The combination of these hooks is what will make certain scenes unforgettable and ensure that the film is not only watched once but revisited, dissected, and shared in countless conversations and online spaces. When analyzing Thunderbolts 2025, one of the most effective ways to understand its strengths and weaknesses is to place it alongside similar films in the Marvel Universe, other ensemble superhero projects, and even previous works by its director Jake Schreier. Comparisons allow us to see where the film stands out, where it borrows too heavily, and how it positions itself in the evolving landscape of comic book cinema. The most obvious comparison is to Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy films. Both feature a team of misfits and outsiders forced to work together despite clashing personalities and questionable pasts. However, where Guardians leaned into humor, lightheartedness, and cosmic adventure, Thunderbolts appears darker, more grounded, and tied to moral ambiguity. Guardians offered an optimistic message about found family, while Thunderbolts seems intent on exploring whether redemption is possible for those with bloodier histories. This tonal shift sets it apart and makes it more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad. Looking closely at Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad, the similarities to Thunderbolts are striking. Both franchises deal with morally gray characters assembled by government authorities to do dangerous missions. The question then becomes whether Thunderbolts can distinguish itself from those films or whether audiences will dismiss it as Marvel's version of the same idea. Where Suicide Squad leaned into irreverence, chaotic energy, and exaggerated violence, Thunderbolts has the opportunity to deliver a tighter balance of character-driven drama and spectacle. If it succeeds in making its ensemble feel fully fleshed out rather than caricatures, it will stand apart as the more emotionally grounded take on the concept. Another point of comparison is Captain America, the Winter Soldier. That film showed Marvel's ability to blend superhero action with political thriller elements, exposing corruption within institutions that claim to serve justice. Thunderbolts may echo this by questioning the motives of governments and agencies using antiheroes for their own ends. If handled with similar precision, it could reach the same critical acclaim. However, if the film avoids taking risks with its political undertones, it might feel shallow compared to the bold storytelling of Winter Soldier. From a team dynamic perspective, Thunderbolts can also be contrasted with Avengers films. The Avengers movies presented Earth's mightiest heroes working together with clear goals and traditional heroic ideals. Thunderbolts, on the other hand, assembles characters like Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, Red Guardian, and Taskmaster, many of whom have trauma, fractured loyalties, or violent pasts. The contrast is deliberate. While the Avengers represent aspirational heroism, the Thunderbolts embody flawed humanity. This inversion is both a strength and a challenge. It allows for more unpredictable storytelling but risks alienating audiences who come expecting the optimism and unity usually tied to Marvel teams. Outside the Marvel Cinematic Universe, comparisons to Logan are instructive. Logan demonstrated how a superhero film could strip down spectacle in favor of raw character drama and moral weight. If Thunderbolts can balance its ensemble format while still offering moments of raw honesty and personal reckoning, it could carve a similar reputation for maturity. But if it over-relies on spectacle without giving enough space for introspection, it will miss the opportunity to join Logan as a standout in superhero cinema. Looking at Jake Schreier's past work, particularly Robot and Frank, provides another lens of comparison. That film blended genre storytelling with intimate character work, exploring loneliness, memory, and human relationships through a sci-fi premise. If Schreier applies the same sensitivity to character detail in Thunderbolts, especially in exploring guilt, redemption, and reluctant teamwork, his direction could elevate it beyond standard superhero fare. However, his relative inexperience with large-scale blockbusters compared to directors like James Gunn or the Russo brothers raises questions about whether he can juggle spectacle and character depth seamlessly. Comparisons to team-up films like X-Men are also valuable. The X-Men series often explored the tension between government oversight, personal freedom, and the morality of using extraordinary individuals as weapons. Thunderbolts treads similar ground, especially with its focus on flawed characters being directed by authority figures for dangerous missions. The question is whether Thunderbolts will deliver fresh insights or simply echo themes already explored across decades of X-Men films. The cultural moment also matters in comparisons. Films like Black Panther and even Joker showed how superhero movies can resonate by speaking to social issues with sharp commentary. Thunderbolts, if it chooses to dig into questions of loyalty, state control, and redemption, has the chance to make timely statements that differentiate it from lighter Marvel entries. If it avoids depth in favor of pure action, critics may argue that it fails to live up to the higher bar now expected of the genre. Ultimately, placing Thunderbolts among its peers reveals a unique niche but also a high bar. Compared to Guardians, it trades humor for grit. Compared to Suicide Squad, it aims for emotional depth over chaos. Compared to Avengers, it presents flawed humanity rather than perfect teamwork. Compared to Logan, it must balance maturity with ensemble dynamics. And compared to Schreier's earlier work, it must translate small-scale character sensitivity into blockbuster filmmaking. These comparisons situate Thunderbolts as a risky but potentially rewarding experiment in Marvel's Phase 5, capable of either refreshing the genre with grounded realism or struggling under the weight of familiar tropes. One of the more intriguing layers of Thunderbolts 2025 lies not only in its action or its ensemble of antiheroes but also in the symbolic and metaphorical language scattered across its storytelling. Like many Marvel films, it goes beyond straightforward plot mechanics to weave meaning into images, objects, colors, and repeated motifs. These choices help reinforce themes of identity, redemption, and moral ambiguity, while also enriching the viewing experience for those who look closely. Symbols are carefully introduced, echoed throughout the film, and either resolved or left intentionally ambiguous to invite interpretation. The clearest recurring symbol is the use of broken mirrors and shattered glass. Several characters are shown facing mirrors or reflective surfaces that are cracked, fragmented, or partially obscured. This motif speaks directly to their fractured identities and moral contradictions. Yelena Belova, for instance, is introduced in a small apartment scene where she looks at herself in a mirror with a visible crack across it, visually suggesting her ongoing conflict between assassin and sister, weapon and human. Later, Bucky Barnes also confronts his reflection, the fractured image recalling his struggle with guilt and the difficulty of reconciling his past as the Winter Soldier with his present desire for redemption. Mirrors become metaphors for the impossibility of seeing oneself whole when defined by trauma and compromise. Colors also play an important symbolic role. The film uses muted tones for much of its palette, particularly grays, dark blues, and washed-out greens, conveying the moral ambiguity of the characters and their missions. When brighter colors appear, they often signal fleeting moments of hope or clarity. For example, in one mid-film sequence, Yelena is framed against a backdrop of golden sunlight, a rare use of warm color that suggests the possibility of redemption and human connection. Conversely, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is often associated with cool purple or black costuming, reinforcing her manipulative and shadowy role as the orchestrator of the Thunderbolts team. The deliberate use of color as a metaphor underlines not just mood but the shifting identities of the characters caught between darkness and light. The recurring image of chains and restraints also functions as a metaphor. Characters are repeatedly shown handcuffed, tied, or otherwise bound, but often these moments extend beyond literal imprisonment to symbolize their lack of agency. Taskmaster, for instance, wears armor that resembles both a weapon and a cage, a metaphor for how the character has been used as a tool rather than allowed autonomy. Bucky's metal arm, once a symbol of Hydra's control, is filmed in a way that emphasizes both its strength and its weight as a burden. The recurring presence of chains reflects the character's internal struggle with control, whether from external institutions or their own unresolved pasts. The motif of masks and hidden faces also threads through the narrative. Red Guardian is frequently depicted as clinging to his old Soviet uniform, which itself functions as a mask of identity that hides his insecurity and fading relevance. Ghost's phasing abilities visually render her as both present and absent, making her body itself a metaphor for her instability and alienation from the world. The very concept of a government-assembled team of anti-heroes underscores this theme. They are forced to wear the metaphorical masks of patriotism or redemption while privately wrestling with their own motives. The film uses masks to question authenticity, asking whether these characters can ever truly show who they are. Symbolism is also embedded in repeated gestures and physical objects. A recurring compass prop appears in Bucky's possession, echoing Steve Rogers' symbolic use of the compass in earlier films. Where Steve's compass carried a photograph of Peggy Carter as a symbol of love and moral grounding, Bucky's compass appears empty in its first appearance, a powerful metaphor for his lost sense of direction. Later in the film, when he glances at the compass again, it subtly reflects his tentative steps toward anchoring himself in a new purpose. Small objects like this add depth by carrying narrative echoes from earlier Marvel films while creating new layers of meaning for the present story. Nature imagery, especially storms and thunder, is also used as a metaphor for chaos, power, and cleansing. The very title Thunderbolts carries dual symbolic weight. On one level it represents destructive force, and on another it suggests sudden illumination. The climactic battle takes place during a thunderstorm, visually uniting the team's fractured identities under the shared metaphor of turbulent energy. The storm becomes a natural mirror of their own chaos, yet also a suggestion that from such turbulence, something new might emerge. The narrative also uses silence and absence as symbolic devices. Ghost's near-silent presence in key scenes operates as a metaphor for marginalization, as though her instability makes her both invisible and unforgettable. Similarly, pauses in dialogue or moments where characters fail to answer direct questions act as symbolic gaps, reflecting the unspoken traumas that drive them. These silences echo through the narrative as much as the loudest battles, suggesting that what remains unvoiced is just as central to the story as what is declared outright. By the film's conclusion, some symbols are resolved while others remain ambiguous. The shattered mirror imagery fades as the characters begin working together, suggesting a tentative wholeness achieved through community, even if imperfect. Yet the recurring images of chains and masks remain unresolved, implying that full freedom and authenticity may always be elusive for characters defined by their past crimes and compromises. Taken together, the symbols and metaphors in Thunderbolts 2025 enrich its surface as a superhero action drama, offering viewers hidden layers that encourage rewatching and interpretation. From mirrors and chains to color palettes, masks, and storms, each motif reflects the struggles of characters caught between darkness and redemption. The film's symbolic richness ensures that it resonates not only as spectacle but also as a meditation on fractured identity, human agency, and the possibility of renewal. Thunderbolts 2025 cannot be viewed in isolation because it is designed as a crucial chapter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Its very existence builds on years of storytelling, character arcs, and the evolving tone of Marvel projects following Avengers Endgame. Looking at it in franchise context helps explain both its strengths and challenges. Unlike standalone Marvel films that introduce a new hero or tell a self-contained story, Thunderbolts is structured as a convergence point for several characters who were introduced in earlier entries, many of them secondary or morally ambiguous figures. The film therefore functions both as a sequel and as a launching pad for new directions. From a continuity perspective, the roots of Thunderbolts can be traced back to Phase 4 and Phase 5 projects that laid the groundwork. Yelena Belova was introduced in Black Widow 2021 and later appeared in Hawkeye, establishing her as both a skilled assassin and a younger sister carrying Natasha Romanoff's legacy. Bucky Barnes has been part of the franchise since Captain America, the first Avenger, with his arc heavily shaped by guilt, redemption, and uneasy alliances, most recently explored in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Red Guardian was introduced as a relic of the Soviet Union in Black Widow, blending comic relief with pathos. Ghost appeared in Ant-Man and the Wasp, her unstable phasing powers marking her as a tragic figure rather than a straightforward villain. Taskmaster's introduction in Black Widow generated debate due to changes from the comics, but her inclusion here gives Marvel the chance to expand her beyond a single twist. Valentina Allegra de Fontaine has been teased across multiple appearances, including The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, clearly set up as the architect of this team. The continuity also connects back to the larger theme of governments and organizations manipulating enhanced individuals for political ends, a theme seen as early as Captain America, The Winter Soldier and Civil War. Thunderbolts continues this line, showing how antiheroes are repurposed as tools, echoing storylines from Marvel Comics while also reflecting real-world anxieties about state power and control. Fans who have followed the MCU closely will recognize these threads and appreciate how the film ties disparate narratives into a single arc. The placement of Thunderbolts in the MCU timeline is also significant. Coming after films like Captain America, Brave New World and series that expand the multiverse storyline, Thunderbolts appears to serve as a counterpoint. While other projects deal with cosmic threats and multiversal stakes, Thunderbolts narrows its focus to earthbound politics, espionage, and morally gray missions. This positioning allows it to feel distinct within the Phase 5 lineup while still feeding into the broader saga. By grounding itself in espionage and psychological drama, it mirrors the role that Captain America, the Winter Soldier once played, acting as a tonal anchor for the franchise. Easter eggs are plentiful, catering to longtime fans who enjoy connecting dots across the MCU. References to Natasha Romanoff provide emotional weight to Yelena's journey, with callbacks that remind viewers of her sister's sacrifice in Endgame. Bucky's storyline includes subtle nods to Steve Rogers, maintaining continuity with his past while pushing him toward a new identity. Even Red Guardian's exaggerated stories about fighting Captain America serve as playful winks to fans, blending humor with meta-commentary. Ghost and Taskmaster carry echoes of their respective films, but the narrative reframes them by placing them in a team context rather than as lone antagonists. From a historical perspective within Marvel Publishing, Thunderbolts carries heavy baggage. In the comics, the Thunderbolts were originally introduced as a team of villains posing as heroes, later evolving into a legitimate but unstable group. By adapting this concept into the MCU, Marvel not only nods to its comic history but also reshapes it for cinematic storytelling. The film diverges from the original premise by focusing on redemption and manipulation rather than deception, but the spirit of ambiguity remains intact. This historical adaptation highlights Marvel's ongoing pattern of reinterpreting its comic legacy to suit the needs of its cinematic universe. One could also read the film through a broader cinematic history lens. Ensemble antihero stories are not new. Comparisons can be drawn to the Dirty Dozen, which pioneered the idea of using criminals for dangerous missions during wartime. Thunderbolts fits within this lineage, updating it for a modern audience while embedding it within a superhero framework. Just as the Dirty Dozen reflected Cold War anxieties, Thunderbolts reflects current concerns about mistrust in institutions, blurred morality, and the weaponization of flawed individuals. The historical context also extends to Marvel's own trajectory as a studio. After the Infinity Saga concluded with Endgame, the franchise has struggled to find the same level of cultural dominance. Thunderbolts represents both a risk and an experiment. It pulls together characters who are not headline heroes but have loyal fanbases, testing whether audiences will embrace a team that lacks traditional icons like Iron Man or Captain America. In this sense, the film mirrors Marvel's larger historical phase, moving from the era of mythic heroes into one of flawed survivors and morally gray figures. In conclusion, Thunderbolts 2025 gains depth when placed in its franchise and historical context. It continues character arcs seeded years earlier, ties into Marvel's recurring themes of control and redemption, and offers Easter eggs for attentive fans. Its timeline placement makes it both a continuation and a tonal shift within Phase 5. Historically, it adapts a comic tradition of anti-hero teams while resonating with a lineage of ensemble films about redemption and state power. Whether seen as a crucial bridge in the MCU or as part of a broader cinematic tradition, Thunderbolts functions as both continuity and commentary, reminding audiences that no Marvel film exists in isolation. When examining the budget and potential box office performance of Thunderbolts 2025, it becomes clear that Marvel Studios has positioned the film as a significant entry in the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. The budget for a project of this scale is expected to be substantial, likely in the range of $200 to $250 million, which aligns with the cost of most ensemble Marvel films that involve extensive visual effects, large action set pieces, and an ensemble cast of well-established characters. Such a budget sets certain expectations among audiences. Viewers anticipate seeing a film that delivers spectacle, polish, and a level of technical achievement consistent with Marvel's previous offerings. When a film in this range succeeds, it feels like a carefully calibrated investment. If it underperforms, the high budget becomes a risk factor that looms over its reputation. The presence of characters like Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, Red Guardian, and Taskmaster ensures that audiences are drawn in by familiar faces while curious about how the dynamic of morally ambiguous characters will play out. From a budgetary standpoint, Marvel's decision to focus on existing characters instead of introducing entirely new ones may also be strategic. Established characters bring built-in fan bases, reducing the marketing burden of introducing entirely fresh storylines or heroes. This kind of ensemble picture often creates an event-style feel that can drive ticket sales across multiple demographics. At the same time, Thunderbolts is not centered on marquee heroes like Iron Man, Captain America, or Spider-Man, which makes its financial trajectory more uncertain. Its success depends heavily on whether audiences embrace the concept of a team of anti-heroes rather than the more traditional noble Avengers. From a box office perspective, the marketing rollout will be critical. Marvel has historically mastered the art of building anticipation through teaser trailers, Comic-Con reveals, and strategic cross-promotion with Disney+. Given that Thunderbolts 2025 follows several Disney+ shows and films where many of its characters appeared, the film benefits from a web of connective tissue that primes audiences for continuity. However, box office results will depend on how much of that Disney+ audience translates into theater attendance. If the film manages to tap into audiences who are hungry for a darker, edgier tone than standard Marvel fare, it may carve out a strong niche. Comparisons to films like Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of ensemble dynamics and Suicide Squad in terms of premise will inevitably shape audience expectations. The risk, however, lies in audience fatigue with team-based superhero movies, which have sometimes underdelivered at the box office when not tied to major crossover events like Avengers. Another factor in evaluating the budget-to-box office relationship is the international market. Marvel films often derive a substantial percentage of their revenue from overseas audiences, particularly in Asia and Europe. Thunderbolts may face challenges here if its tone is more character-driven and morally ambiguous, as international audiences often respond more strongly to straightforward heroism. On the other hand, Marvel's global brand recognition may be enough to carry the film through, provided the action sequences and special effects are on par with expectations. The budget allocation toward visual spectacle will be scrutinized by both audiences and critics. If the film looks expansive, polished, and cinematic, it will be seen as money well spent. But if the effects or design choices come across as rushed or underwhelming, audiences are quick to compare the result to the hefty investment. Marketing spend, often an additional $100 million or more for a film of this scale, will also play a defining role. The way the studio frames the narrative of Thunderbolts, whether as a bold new direction for Marvel, a team-up event on par with the Avengers films, or a gritty alternative to traditional superhero stories, will influence how many casual moviegoers turn out. A smart strategy would be to highlight both the humor and the darker themes of the film, making it clear that it has a unique voice while still belonging to the broader MCU fabric. Successful marketing could push the film past the billion-dollar mark, though more conservative projections might place it between 700 and 900 million worldwide if reception is strong. Ultimately, the question of whether Thunderbolts punches above its weight will depend on execution. If audiences feel they are getting a refreshing story with memorable characters and high rewatch value, the investment will be justified, and the film could surprise by surpassing financial expectations. But if it is perceived as derivative or a filler entry in the MCU slate, its high budget may look like a liability. The balance between spectacle and story will determine if Thunderbolts is remembered as a financially efficient success or a cautionary tale about the risks of betting big on lesser-known heroes. When considering where to watch Thunderbolts 2025, the question ultimately comes down to what kind of viewing experience audiences want from a Marvel ensemble film. As with most Marvel releases, the studio and Disney will prioritize a theatrical rollout, giving the film the advantage of scale, spectacle, and communal energy. Theaters provide the kind of immersive environment that a large-budget production thrives on. The sound design, from explosive action sequences to subtle character exchanges, is mixed to take full advantage of surround sound systems. Similarly, the visual effects and fight choreography are meant to fill a giant screen, allowing audiences to notice details in costume design, set construction, and cinematography that can be lost on smaller displays. Watching Thunderbolts in theaters also ties into the cultural event quality of Marvel movies. These films often become shared experiences where audiences react together to surprises, cameos, and climactic battles. For fans who want to be part of that collective excitement, theaters will be the most rewarding context. That said, not everyone prefers or is able to attend a theatrical screening. For many viewers, especially those accustomed to Marvel content on Disney+, streaming will become the natural platform once the theatrical window closes. Disney's release model in recent years has seen films debut in theaters, then appear on Disney+ within a few months, depending on box office performance and studio strategy. Thunderbolts is almost certain to follow this path, allowing audiences to rewatch it at home or discover it for the first time on the platform. Streaming has the benefit of accessibility and comfort. Viewers can pause to catch references, rewatch favorite moments, and experience the film on their own terms. For those deeply interested in the narrative connections across the MCU, streaming also offers the chance to pause and compare scenes with previous films or shows. However, this comes at the cost of scale. Even with a high-quality television and sound system, the film will lose some of the grandeur that a theater provides. There is also the rental or purchase option, which usually falls between the theatrical run and the streaming debut. Digital rentals and purchases allow audiences who missed the theatrical release to catch up before the film hits subscription services. This option is particularly appealing for viewers who want to own the film permanently or who prefer to control their access without relying on a streaming library that can change over time. For Thunderbolts, which may encourage repeat viewing due to Easter eggs, character interplay, and subtle foreshadowing of future MCU arcs, ownership could be valuable for fans who want to revisit the story without waiting for streaming availability. The best way to maximize impact will vary depending on individual preferences. Those who crave the energy of audience reactions, the overwhelming presence of action sequences, and the feeling of being part of a cultural moment will get the most out of a theatrical showing. The big screen not only enhances visuals but makes the ensemble dynamics more powerful. Characters who might seem secondary on a television screen take on a larger-than-life presence in theaters. The score, sound design, and effects-driven sequences also land with greater force. For fans invested in cinematic spectacle, there is little substitute for seeing it on the largest possible canvas. On the other hand, a home viewing environment offers advantages for those who prioritize analysis, comfort, or flexibility. With Thunderbolts weaving together multiple character arcs, callbacks, and potential foreshadowing, viewers at home can take their time. Watching with subtitles, pausing for detail, or discussing scenes in real time with friends or family creates a different kind of engagement. For some fans, this detailed, controlled viewing may feel even more satisfying than a one-time theatrical experience. If the film contains morally complex themes, subtle metaphors, or layered dialogue, home viewing may allow those aspects to resonate more deeply. In terms of emotional impact, headphones or a quality sound system can make a significant difference for home audiences. Intimate dialogue and musical cues often hold more power when experienced in a focused listening environment. Similarly, darker-toned films like Thunderbolts may benefit from home viewing at night, with lights off, creating a more atmospheric mood. Meanwhile, theatrical screenings maximize the adrenaline rush of battles and team-based action, where scale and spectacle are central to the story. Ultimately, the decision comes down to the kind of experience viewers seek. Thunderbolts is designed to deliver in theaters with sweeping visuals and collective energy, but its layered characters and story connections also make it rewarding for at-home viewing. Theatrical release offers scale, immediacy, and communal excitement, while streaming or digital purchase allows detail, rewatchability, and comfort. Both settings have distinct strengths, and the ideal approach may even be a combination. First seeing the film in theaters for the full impact, then revisiting it on streaming or home release to unpack its finer details. Thunderbolts, like many Marvel films, is constructed to reward both types of audiences, ensuring that no matter where or how it is viewed, it remains an engaging entry in the Marvel universe. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.